Let's bring in Grover Norquist, who's president of Americans for Tax Reform. Grover, I think we've had this conversation before. Red states are killing blue states, okay? That's just a generic point, and there was a story up on Fox Digital about that. But I want to narrow down this Florida story. So here's the deal. Stay with me. Florida's got more population now, over 22 million. New York's under 20 million. But Florida's budget, this is incredible, half of New York's. 115 billion, New York's 227 billion. Let me stop right there, Grover. Florida has more people and only half the budget size. What does that tell you?
Well, it tells you it's not the sun and it's not the beaches, okay?
Right.
They don't spend as much money. They don't have as many government officials. They don't pay them tremendously more than the private sector, and they don't give them ridiculous pensions. That's what you're buying in New York, plus an unemployment rate about twice Florida's.
Well, I'm going to get to that.
Which increases your spending.
But you hold, to your point, you hold spending down, and guess what? You don't have to tax. So take a look at this, folks. All right, the top income tax rate in Florida is 0. In New York, it's 10.9%. It's at least that. But if you live in New York City, state and local, you pay 14.8%. If you live in Miami, you pay 0. So, Grover, at the risk of going out on a limb, I'm going to say budget control, spending control allows tax control. Is that way out on a limb?
No, that's exactly it. I get asked all the time because at Americans for Tax Reform, we're working with a dozen states phasing their income taxes to 0. And people say, well, what are you going to replace the income tax with? And the answer is less spending. Florida has $100 billion plus less spending every year. That's the income tax they don't have. They didn't have to move it to sales taxes or property taxes. They didn't spend it. They don't have to steal it.
All right. And the other stuff is, okay, so less spending and low taxes. Well, guess what? Florida's economy is way outperforming New York. Florida's unemployment rate, 2.6%. New York's 4.2. Nationwide, I think, is 3.6. And GDP, they have state GDP. Look at this. Real state GDP growth. This is 2016 to 2021. Florida's GDP is averaging 17%. All right, that's over that 5-year period. New York, 8%. Florida has more population. It has double the growth. It has virtually no taxes, and it is badly outperforming. And again, I want to give credit. You've got some very distinguished Republican governors, Jeb Bush down there, Rick Scott, now Ron DeSantis. They deserve a lot of credit for holding the line, Grover.
They certainly do. And, well, how can we help the middle class or poor people grow twice as fast? That's better than any welfare program or promise that anybody ever thought up. Grow twice as fast for 5, 10, 20, 50 years. That's progress.
Now, Grover, I don't think President Biden has gotten the Florida message. What do you think?
He has not. He doesn't understand. If you remember, he gave a speech when he was running for office for president, and he looked out into a crowd and said, the Republicans talk about the stock market. None of you have shares of stock. He lives in a world, in his mind, that's 60, 70 years ago, where maybe 10%, 5-10% of Americans own shares of stock. Today, over 60% of Americans have a 401k or an IRA. It's not just your income, it's your life savings. And add to that, that if you move to a red state, and Florida just passed educational savings accounts, in Iowa, the number I have in front of me, it's $7,000 per child goes out to every child who wants to go to a private school or to homeschool or to the public school down the street. Think of how many parents with 4 kids are going to move from high-tax states like New York with no school choice, with no educational savings accounts, to states that have low or no income tax, city and state, and they let you take the tax dollars for schools to the school of your choice.
Well, see, look, I'm not taking side in the presidential, but what I want to say is Ron DeSantis, governor of Florida, right, he has now put through this school choice, which is so important, and I don't see Ron DeSantis saying, I want to tax rich people All you wealthy people from Illinois or New York, I'm just going to tax your tails off. You come down. I don't see him saying that. That's what Biden always said. We've got to tax rich people. I don't see DeSantis saying that. There's a little bit of a difference. Give you the last word, Grover Norquist.
DeSantis did have a harsh word for some rich people in Florida. Trial lawyers. They just passed tort reform, which is going to make everybody in Florida better off except a handful of billionaire trial lawyers.
Oh, that's great. I didn't realize that he had done that. Anyway, give credit where credit is due.
Just happened.
He's the governor, and he's running a great state down there. And he was preceded. Jeb Bush was a good governor. Rick Scott was a good governor. Mm-hmm. It just shows you what good governance can do for a health. I mean, I love it. Florida has more people and half the budget and no taxes. Grover Norquist, the best of the best. Thanks very much. Folks, I'll be right back with my last word.